There are moments in football history that should have never happened, but because they did, they set the game on an entirely different path, polluting its history and changing its future. From players getting escorted off the pitch by the police, to the famous Zidane headbutt and even the Maradona handball, respected players have had their names rubbed in the mud by controversies. But despite these ugly events, football has been better for it, and the earliest of such happened over half a century ago. The rawest form of human emotions are often displayed on the field of play, and on June 2nd, 1962, at the 7th edition of the World Cup, tempers were so high that 60 years later, the Group B game between host nation Chile and Italy is remembered as the Battle of Santiago. What happened that fateful day stemmed from patriotic players determined not to lose to a team willing to play dirty to secure a win. Meanwhile, biased journalism from both nations only escalated the tension leading up to the match. The chaos began almost immediately. Just 35 seconds after kickoff, the first foul was committed, setting the tone for what would become one of football's most infamous matches. Tensions boiled over in the 8th minute when Italy's Giorgio Ferrini, after a rough foul on Honorino Landa, was shown the red card. But Ferrini wasn't leaving quietly. Refusing to accept his dismissal, he had to be physically escorted off the field by policemen. Meanwhile, Chile's Lionel Sanchez was ruffling a few feathers himself. In the chaos, Sanchez delivered a crushing left hook to Humberto Masciel, breaking his nose. The referee, Ken Aston, missed the incident because he was too busy trying to get Ferrini off the pitch. Minutes later, Sanchez struck again, this time hitting Italian defender Mario David in retaliation for a rough foul. Despite the linesman being just a few steps away, Sanchez escaped punishment yet again. But Mario David wasn't letting it slide. In a moment of revenge, he attempted to kick Sanchez in the head. That earned him a red card, leaving Italy with just 9 players on the field. The madness didn't stop there. Spitting, brawling, and more scuffles ensued, with police stepping in 3 separate times to restore order. Although most of the match was spent brawling, there was still time for actual football, and Chile made the most of it. In the final 16 minutes, Jaime Ramirez scored with a precision header, and Jorge Toro sealed the deal with a stunning low shot from long range. Chile walked away victorious, 2-0. But as much as Chile had won, football as a sport had lost. The display of violence and lack of professional behavior threatened to taint the game and turn it into something that it wasn't. Unfortunately, the Battle of Santiago wasn't the only violent game of the tournament. Other matches also featured a lot of craziness meant for the game of rugby. The first 4 games of the tournament had players suffer fractures and broken bones from atrocious tackles. Argentina's game against Bulgaria had up to 69 free kicks. FIFA knew that if they didn't do something about this, players wouldn't want to play in a tournament that might end their careers prematurely. And there was only one apparent solution to this ordeal: better officiating. By the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, referees had more authority and could send players off. It was the first World Cup to feature the yellow and red card, and now FIFA and players had no reason to fear the decline of the beautiful game. But between 1966 and 1970, from the Battle of Santiago to the new refereeing implementation, another problematic event happened in a place described as football's home. On July 30th, 1966, England played the biggest game in the nation's history, the final of the 8th FIFA World Cup. England not only hosted the World Cup, but made it to the final in front of their home fans in classic fairy tale fashion. The only thing is, they were facing a nation just as talented, West Germany, who had finished top of their group like England did. Germany had also knocked out tournament heavyweights Uruguay and the Soviet Union. But neither the English players nor the fans were troubled by how strong their opponents were. And with a crowd of over 95,000 people gathered in Wembley, the stage was set for England's biggest game. It would be the Germans who would take the lead early in the first half thanks to Helmut Haller, but Jeff Hurst quickly put England back in the game with a thumping header. England, for the first time in the game, took the lead with just 12 minutes to go. However, Wolfgang Weber scored in the 90th minute, proving that the Germans wanted a second World Cup just as much as England wanted a first. But it would take just 11 minutes of extra time for the course of football history to be changed forever with this goal right here. Hurst's shot had bounced off the crossbar and hit the ground before bouncing into the field again, making many unsure if it really was a goal. A closer look showed that the ball never passed the line. But after the Swiss referee Gottfried Dienst consulted with his linesman, he awarded the goal. While the England team and their fans were jubilating, the Germans were infuriated and frustrated. This showed in how sloppily they played the remainder of the game. They had lost all hope, and by the end of the game, Hurst had gotten himself another goal.
I will tell FIFA and everybody connected with world football, the ball was at least 1 metre over the line. Full stop. On a serious answer, I think it's, with my view, and the ball, I didn't see it. You're 2-2 against Germany. You want to believe more than your life's worth that the ball across the line.
In the very first World Cup that England hosted, they had won it. And although Germany had accepted their terrible fate, these two national teams went on to have very different World Cup trajectories. Germany has won 3 more World Cups, while England are yet to reach a final since hosting one. But England winning that World Cup did more than give them bad luck in the future. It showed the football world that the eyes of officials and standard cameras weren't enough. Although the 1966 World Cup was the first one televised in colour, football still had a long way to go as far as audio and visuals were concerned. But aside from accurately officiating to stop teams and players from cheating their way to victory, too little passion was also damaging the game at another time. A decade and a half after England's World Cup triumph, something just as controversial, if not more, happened in the 1982 World Cup. With 24 teams competing, they were divided into 6 groups of 4. Each team played 3 matches, with the top 2 teams from each group advancing. So in Group 2, consisting of Chile, Algeria, Austria, and West Germany, all teams except for the South Americans had a chance of qualifying by the last match between Austria and West Germany. The only way for Algeria to progress was if Austria drew or won, or if West Germany won by 3 goals or more. So, with Germany scoring the first goal early into the first half, Algeria knew that if Austria could equalize or Germany scored a barrage of goals, they would be safe. The intensity of the game indicated that it was heading in this direction, but after the first half, things started to go a little differently. Austria and Germany would have the ball in the opposition half and look poised to start dangerous attacks, then out of nowhere play the ball back, almost as if they didn't want to score. Also, it wasn't just German and Austrian fans that were in the crowd. Algerian fans were there too, as they had just as many stakes in this game as the 2 European nations. A 1-0 win over Austria meant they would not be moving to the knockout stage. Hence, they suspected the game was fixed. The match was investigated after protests from the Algerian FA, but FIFA dismissed the matter despite plenty of evidence suggesting that the 2 European teams played the way they did, so that a non-European country would not progress to the knockouts. Although the 2 countries weren't punished, they did face plenty of backlash for it. But the disgrace of Gijon, as bad as it was, looks like a light crime compared to what happened in the next World Cup in Mexico. The 1986 World Cup was special because the greatest of all time of that era was in his prime, in the group stage. Maradona's display of greatness allowed Argentina to be undefeated moving into the knockout stages. However, in their first knockout game, they narrowly beat Uruguay, and because England had beaten Paraguay, that meant that the quarter-final tie was going to be a face-off between World Cup winners Argentina and England. But this wasn't just a mere knockout game. It wasn't even a contest of heavyweights. It was a match that would feature perhaps the most controversial goal in football history. The stage was set, Argentina versus England, a clash between 2 nations with a heated history. The stakes were high, pride was on the line, and the pressure of the moment was undeniable. For 45 minutes, both teams fought hard, but neither could break through the other's defenses. The second half began, bringing a moment of football history that's still debated today. Diego Maradona, already showing his brilliance, passed to Jorge Valdano and rushed into the penalty area. Valdano lost control of the ball, and England's Steve Hodge attempted a clearance. The ball soared into the air, and as England's goalkeeper Peter Shilton leaped to claim it, Maradona stepped in. He used his hand to punch the ball into the net, a move he later described as the hand of God. None of the officials caught it, and even the commentators were unsure of what had happened. Referee Ali bin Nasser looked to his assistant, Bogdan Doshev, for confirmation. Doshev, following FIFA protocols, signaled the goal was legitimate, and bin Nasser pointed to the center circle to restart the game. Doshev later admitted he had doubts but was bound by FIFA rules, which discouraged assistants from questioning decisions unless directly asked. While Maradona's first goal caused controversy, his second goal was a masterpiece. He dribbled past nearly the entire England team to score, securing Argentina's place in the semi-finals and, eventually, the World Cup title. This match highlighted flaws in FIFA's refereeing system, sparking changes that now encourage communication between officials to avoid similar mistakes. But even with reforms, some moments in football remain unforgettable and unfixable. The stage was set during the 1994 World Cup in the United States. Colombia, a team brimming with talent, entered as favorites. Their players had honed their skills on football pitches funded by none other than Pablo Escobar, the infamous drug lord. But despite the promise of glory, the team faltered. An own goal by their defender, Andres Escobar, crushed their dreams of going far in the World Cup. Returning to Medellin, a city still reeling from Pablo Escobar's violent legacy, Andres tried to pick up the pieces. His friends and manager warned him to stay low, to avoid the seething streets where anger and sorrow brewed. Yet, in a gesture of defiance and hope, he insisted, "I must show my face to my people." On the night of July 2nd, 1994, Andres decided to go out. He met friends at El Indio Bar, where his charm and composure temporarily masked the growing tension in the room. But whispers turned into insults. A group began mocking him, jeering at his error. Unable to ignore the taunts, Andres left, hoping to reason with his tormentors in the parking lot. What followed was a moment of senseless brutality. Escobar's attempt to explain that it was an honest mistake fell on deaf ears. The group's rage boiled over. 6 shots echoed through the nights, silencing Andres Escobar forever. Within minutes, Colombia had lost one of its brightest stars, his death an emblem of a nation torn apart by violence, greed, and misplaced anger. This wasn't just the story of a man's tragic end. It was a grim reminder of how deeply crime and corruption had mixed with Colombia's beautiful game. There are many who are just hearing about this story for the first time. But for this next controversy, there's probably nobody who is not aware of it. In the 9th minute of the 2006 FIFA World Cup final, all eyes were on Zinedine Zidane. The pressure, immense. The stakes, history. Standing just 12 yards from Italy's Gianluigi Buffon, one of the greatest goalkeepers in the world, Zidane didn't just score, he made a statement with that goal. One that said that France were gunning for their second World Cup trophy. But Italy wasn't ready to bow down. Just 10 minutes later, Marco Materazzi, the towering defender, meets a perfectly placed corner and smashes a header past Fabian Barthez. 1-1. Game on. The minutes tick by, and the tension tightens like a noose. Both sides are relentless, trading blows, but neither delivers the knockout punch. And then, the moment that silenced the world. Extra time. The 110th minute, Zidane walks past Materazzi, an exchange of words, and suddenly this happened. Zidane's head crashes into Materazzi's chest. The stadium freezes in disbelief. The referee reaches for red. Zidane's final act on the grandest stage of them all isn't a goal, an assist, or even a glorious tackle, but a headbutt. Although the match went to penalties, Zidane's absence was felt as Italy won the shootout and claimed the cup. As much as his act of violence was frowned upon, it was later revealed that Materazzi had made a joke about Zidane's sister, saying he would rather have her than his shirt. Given how hard the French captain ramped the defender's chest, he didn't appreciate the joke. This raised concern about verbal abuse during games, and although trash talking is nothing new, there are certain lines that shouldn't be crossed and statements that shouldn't be made. Although the next controversy still involves France, it happened before the World Cup. France are a team in the upper echelon of country football. Historically, they've been dominant. And in recent years, they've been just as formidable with back-to-back World Cup final appearances in the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. But there was a time that even with a prolific team, they nearly missed a World Cup. This was the 2010 World Cup, to be precise. Because France finished second in Group 7 of their World Cup qualifying group, they had to play in the playoffs against the runners-up of Group 8, the Republic of Ireland. Not qualifying straight away wasn't good enough for a team that still had the likes of Thierry Henry, Florent Malouda, and a young Karim Benzema. But going against a 60th ranked Ireland, this was going to be a walkover, right? Indeed, in the first leg in Croke Park, Dublin, it was the French who first edged past the Irish courtesy of an Anelka strike late in the second half. This meant that even a goalless draw would see the French qualified. But Roy Keane showed that the Irish wanted to go to the World Cup as much as the French did as he scored the opener just after the half-hour mark. The rest of the game became a fierce contest with the match ending 1-0 after normal time. With the aggregate at 1-1, the game had to go into extra time. 2 minutes before the end of the first half of extra time, France produced a moment of magic. Malouda launched the ball into the Ireland box, where Henry played it into the path of William Gallas, who found the back of the net. As much as the goal was awarded and stood, close replay showed something foul in the build-up to the goal. Henry had stopped the ball from going out of bounds with his left hand before passing it to Gallas. Things happened so fast, and given how crowded the box was, match referee Martin Hansen didn't blow against it. The Irish side was infuriated as they just had their chance to go to the World Cup stolen from them. It became a national issue, with even Irish government officials lobbying for a replay, or at least some sort of requital. The requital did come, but not the way they hoped it would. In 2014, FIFA and the Football Association of Ireland reached a £5 million settlement over what happened that night in Saint Denis. But aside from the outcry from Ireland, this World Cup qualifier match triggered something much bigger. By the following year, the project to develop the VAR technology system was in the works in the Netherlands. The VAR system was basically a system of cameras situated all over the field that made sure that no angle of the game was missed. This way, when tough calls had to be made, there was evidence ensuring that the referee never made the wrong one. Trials after trials were carried out, petitions were sought and signed, and slowly it became a common thing in the game. First in the A-League in Austria in 2017, the following year at the World Cup, and by the end of the summer it was part of the Champions League. And maybe, if it were part of the Champions League as early as the 2004-2005 season, AC Milan would have faced a different English side in the final. This is because the semi-final tie between Chelsea and Liverpool may have had one goal, but it was very controversial. In the 2005 Champions League semi-finals, people were more eager to see how the all-English tie panned out compared to AC Milan's face-off with PSV. It was easy to tell that AC Milan were the favourites, but not with the all-English tie, it wasn't. Before they met in the Champions League, Chelsea and Liverpool had played each other twice in the Premier League. On both occasions, Chelsea won by one goal scored by J. Cole, but the intensity of a Champions League semi-final can't be compared with a mere league game, so as you would imagine, the outcome was very different. The first leg at Stamford Bridge had ended in a goalless draw, to leave the tie delicately balanced heading into the second leg at Anfield. But it burst into life just 4 minutes into the reverse fixture on Merseyside, with the sequence of events leading to Luis Garcia's goal. After a few moments of confusion, the Slovakian referee Lubos Michel signaled that the goal had been given, sending Anfield into a state of euphoria. Rafael Benitez's side would go on to repel all of Chelsea's attempts and keep a 1-0 aggregate win to book their place in the final in Istanbul, where they would go on to secure their 5th Champions League in a very dramatic style. But around half a decade later, something even more controversial would happen in the World Cup. The 2010 World Cup was definitely one for the history books. The first ever World Cup to be hosted on the continent of Africa, and the first ever triumph for the country of Spain. But aside from amazing spectacles and the despicable Jabulani ball, there was another controversy at the 2010 World Cup, and it involved two nations who we've mentioned before, England and Germany. June 27th was set for a day football would always remember. Germany seemed to be the dominant side in the early stages of the match, and in the 20th minute, what seemed to have been a harmless goal kick floated over the England centre-backs and closer, just about kept Upson far enough to allow him to slot the ball past David James. What seemed like a dream start for one team felt like a disaster for the other. And if Germany's matches in the group stage proved anything, it was that they hardly stopped looking for a goal after their first one. 12 minutes later, they would breeze through the England backline, this time with a sequence of passes that put Muller on the counter, baiting the England players trying to recover. He sent the ball to Lukas Podolski, who aimed for the far post to extend Germany's lead to 2. But England pulled one back, and they were looking for a second, and it seemed they had gotten it. With less than 15 minutes left in the first half, England were on the attack, but when it seemed as if the German defence had foiled their efforts, the ball fell to Frank Lampard, who didn't waste time to take a shot. Neuer was off his line and unable to get a hand on it as the ball struck the crossbar and bounced over the line. The crowd went wild, and the English bench was elated while Lampard and the players on the field started celebrating. England had equalised, or so they thought. What seemed like a moment of joy turned into a state of confusion. The ball did bounce over the line, but the spin on it made it bounce out towards Neuer, who caught it and continued play as if nothing happened. Even the referee didn't blow for a goal, despite the replay showing that a goal should have been given. Was this England paying for the 1966 World Cup? Even if it was, what preceded it was totally gut-wrenching. England had lost their morale, and it showed in the 2 other goals they conceded in the second half. But this wasn't 1966, where things could easily be dismissed. England were the victims, and this was not a good look for the sport. Sepp Blatter wasted no time in issuing an apology to the entire nation. A clear goal being disallowed on the biggest stage in what was one of the most high-profile matches of the tournament is really something inexcusable, and Blatter knew this. Something had to be done immediately. What's shocking is that this could have been prevented. FIFA had meetings before the World Cup with the International FA Board about technology being deployed in refereeing, but they had shut it down. But now, they had to reopen some closed files if they wanted to make the game better and avoid costly mistakes like these. These meetings yielded a new way to accurately determine if goals were scored, and a new era of football with goal line technology began. But developing the technology was one thing, getting it on the field of play was another. The first competition to ever use goal line technology was the 2012 Club World Cup, and its success meant it was ready to make its debut in leagues across the world. The Premier League, home to the country that had a goal robbed from them, was the first to use goal line technology, with 2013-14 marking the beginning of its use. 2 years later, French and German leagues would follow suit, and by 2016, every UEFA competition was using this technology. The 2014 World Cup was the first to use it, but not everyone was buying into the idea. La Liga was the only major league in Europe that didn't show interest. Why? Well, the league president Javier Tebas feels the cost of getting it isn't worth it, but in the time to come, that would be a decision that they would perhaps come to regret because of this next controversial moment. Barcelona enjoyed a solid start to the 2017-18 La Liga season. They had won their first 7 games, scoring 23 goals and conceding just 2 goals. The first hitch in their campaign came when they traveled to Madrid to face Atletico. While they conceded a goal early, Luis Suarez was able to level the match in the last 10 minutes of the game. Atletico's tenacity and gameplay allowed them to get a point off the league leaders, but soon, Barca resumed winning ways until they faced Valencia away on the 26th of November 2017 during match week 13. La Terreta definitely did their assignment, because they held their own against Barcelona for much of the early stages of the game. But as long as Messi was on the field, they weren't going to have everything figured out, because at the half-hour mark, Messi did this. He rifled the ball so hard that Valencia's keeper Neto fumbled it and retreated back to swat it out. But by then it had well and truly crossed the line. While Messi ran away in celebration, Valencia launched a quick counter-attack that could have ended in a goal. Despite their protest, match referee Nacho Villanueva stood by his decision to disallow Messi's goal. This completely changed the trajectory of the game. By the hour mark of the match, Valencia had scored, meaning Barcelona were behind with half an hour to get back in the game. They did come back, after a Lionel Messi cross found Jordi Alba at the end of it to put them level with the home side. Unfortunately, that was the best they could do, and they missed out on 2 points simply because La Liga president Javier Tebas refused to have goal line technology in La Liga over sentiments about its cost. Although this controversial refereeing decision cost Barca the win, they did go on to remain unbeaten in the league for the next few months, with their only defeat coming in the penultimate match of the season against Levante. But even though the disallowed goal didn't change the trajectory of the season, it proved that La Liga definitely had a problem. This was not the first time Barcelona had a goal disallowed, as just a season ago, a similar situation happened in a game against Real Betis. After the incident against Valencia, it happened again in an El Clasico match where Real Madrid edged past the Catalan side 3-2, partly due to a Barca goal getting ruled as not crossing the line. As controversial as these moments were, they were necessary for the growth and progression of the beautiful game. Now, billions of people can watch their favorite teams and stars take to the field, knowing that they would only have to witness beautiful moments, without having to worry about biased and unfair decisions throughout the course of play. Which moment do you think was the most controversial and had the biggest impact on the sport?